Welcome to Phase 2 of ACE's Kickstart Guide. Before moving into the exercises of this phase of the program, we'll begin with a warm-up that will consist of front plank, side plank, and glute bridge, all of which can be found in our previous video. Let's go ahead and get started.
The hip hinge is a very simple exercise to teach you how to squat correctly. All we need is a broomstick or a dowel like Jessica's got. Jessica, go ahead and place this behind your head. And you notice she's holding it above the top of her head, and she's making contact with the back of her head between her shoulder blades and with the tailbone. And it's always going to make contact with those 3 points. Jessica's going to actually do her exercise, so go ahead. And you notice what she's doing. She's simply just pushing her hips backwards. As opposed to starting her squat driving her knees forward, this is teaching us how to do this movement correctly. And just do a few repetitions here. Notice the bar never leaves those 3 points. And what it also does is places Jessica's head in a nice neutral position and avoids her kind of lifting her head up and putting compression in the back of her neck area.
The squat is one of our primary movements that we use throughout the day. As you can see here, Fabio's already performing the exercise, and he begins with a hip hinge, pushing his hips back first before he lowers down. As you see, he's bringing his fingertips all the way down to the ground, a point where you may not be yet in this exercise, but certainly something to strive towards. As you can see, as he squats, the heels stay rooted into the ground, and we're going to have him come down and hold for a moment to show here you're looking to create a parallel line between the torso and the shin bones, and as he presses up, he'll complete the number of repetitions designated in the program, and don't be afraid to, as you lower down, to allow the knees to come forward slightly, as that's perfectly safe to do during this exercise.
The push-up is a wonderful exercise to develop your chest and your triceps. Now, you notice Jessica's doing the exercise in a bent knee position, which is a great way to start. So you notice her hands are directly under her shoulders. Her body is nice and stiff. She's engaging her tummy muscles, keeping that back nice and flat. Her head is nice and neutral. And she's going to do her repetitions that way. Now, if you want more of a challenge on this exercise, what we can have you do is go to the full push-up. So Jessica's going to actually lift her knees off the mat. Her body is nice and stiff, and she's going to maintain that. She's not going to let her hips sag towards the floor. She's not going to let her hips hike up. She's definitely going to push herself to the point where her elbows extend, and she's going to drop and get her chest near the mat. And there's your push-up exercise. Just do the repetitions until you feel that fatigue.
The lunge is a very popular exercise commonly seen in the gym, and it's important that we focus on how to perform this exercise properly to really reap the benefits. As you can see, Fabio's already moved into the lunge. As you notice, he's taking a small step forward, and he begins the movement with a hip hinge before actually lowering down. Important to notice here as well that he's allowing his torso to come forward slightly as he moves through the lunge. Talking about some things that we see commonly done incorrectly during the lunge, as you notice, Fabio is taking a large step forward now, and in doing so, he's now allowing the knee to push forward, really placing a lot of stress on the knee joint. Another thing we'll see is people trying to keep the torso nice and straight throughout the movement, which places a lot of strain on the low back. Going into the correct form, once again, we see the stance is shortened, and it's also okay during this movement if we're initiating with the hip hinge to allow the knee to come forward just slightly and focus on keeping the knee directly over the second toe throughout the movement.
Jessica's going to perform the bent over row. She's going to start with one dumbbell. So in this position, she's got her legs in a bit of a split position that helps stabilize her body. She's going to go ahead and sort of hinge her hips down, holding the dumbbell right in front of her body, and she's just going to simply perform a rowing movement. As she does this exercise, she's targeting her biceps, she's targeting her back muscles. At the same time, she's keeping her trunk nice and stiff, so she's firing her muscles around her core to keep it nice and rigid. You notice there's no movement in her trunk and in her head. She just performs the movement, pulling the dumbbell right up to her side. No rotation of her trunk. If you want a progression of this exercise, Jessica's going to demonstrate how we do this with both hands. So she's now going to hinge backwards, get the dumbbells ready. Now it's going to require a little more activation here because she's not supporting herself. Her feet are now together, she's nice and stable, and she's just going to go ahead and repeat the same movement, pulling up, keeping those elbows right close to her side of her body.
The side lunge is a great variation to the forward lunge. As you can see here, Fabio's already moved into the exercise, and notice as he takes a step out, he takes a small step, initiates the movement with a hip hinge before pushing his hips over, aligning the knee over the foot. Some common mistakes that we see in this exercise is a large step taken out, and notice here in doing so, the heel no longer remains in contact with the ground, which is what we want during this exercise. We also notice in taking a large step that the knee never comes directly over the foot. So to correct this, we once again start with a smaller step out, initiate with the hip hinge, move the hips, and align the knee over the foot, keeping the heel down throughout the movement.
The shoulder press exercise will target the muscles in the shoulder joint. This exercise can be performed in a seated position, as Jessica is going to demonstrate. Or if you want more of a challenge, you could progress to standing, which involves a little more stabilization of the body as you do the exercise. Now you notice Jessica has the dumbbell sitting on the middle of her thighs. She's going to start the exercise by bringing them up to just above shoulder level, and she's going to start pressing the dumbbells overhead. She wants to fully extend her arms as she's doing that overhead right there. And the one thing you've got to pay attention to is watching your wrist position. There is a tendency to let the wrist kind of fall into this position as we do the exercise. You want to avoid that. So really focus on keeping this wrist nice and stiff and straight. The other thing I want you to do is to avoid any arching of your back throughout the exercise. So really contract your abdominal muscles to stabilize that spine. And just perform your repetitions until you experience fatigue or until you achieve the number specified in the program. The seated trunk rotation is an excellent exercise to target the sides of your body if performed correctly. A great way to do this exercise is to use a medicine ball, as Jessica is demonstrating for us. But if you don't have a medicine ball at home, not to worry. Look for anything around the house, maybe a gallon of water, that is heavy enough to allow you to perform your repetitions until either you fatigue or you complete the number of repetitions assigned. Remember, never compromise your technique. What Jessica's doing, she's in a seated position with a very slight backwards lean. She's engaging her muscles of her abdominal region, and she's just performing her repetitions. Nice, slow, controlled movements to each side, and she just continues her reps until she's fatigued. As a progression to this, what Jessica can do is lean slightly back. Now make sure you keep those muscles firmly contracted, and we don't put any stress on the low back, and just perform the repetitions likewise. The Tricep Kickbacks is a great exercise to target the back of your upper arm. Now you can use a dumbbell or any other weight that you have at home that allows you to grasp it in your hands to perform a motion like Jessica's doing right there. Now the idea is to get yourself into the position that Jessica is in right now, which is her legs in a split position. She's stabilizing her body by resting her hand on her front thigh. She's nice and tight through her abdominal region, head nice and neutral. And the only movement we really need here is to really stabilize the shoulder and just simply extend and bend the elbow right here, targeting the muscles called the triceps. Right? Perform your reps until you feel fatigue or until you complete the number of repetitions specified. One thing you've got to try and avoid is as you start to fatigue, you might see the tendency of your body to rotate. Just make sure you keep your body nice and stiff. Dumbbell hammer curls are an exercise that targets the bicep muscles and the muscles of the upper forearm. Now Jessica's holding the dumbbells in what we call a hammer position with the dumbbells facing forward. Now you notice her position. She's got her feet slightly staggered. She's really keeping her abdominal muscles contracted. She's not going to allow her back to sway into this exercise, and she simply performs her repetitions until she either reaches fatigue or she completes the assigned number of sets. Now the idea here is to just simply bring the dumbbells up to about shoulder level and not let the elbows drift too far forward. A variation of this exercise, if you really want to target the biceps, is as Jessica comes up, you'll notice she's also going to rotate her forearms outward, so she brings her, at the top of the exercise, her palms are facing her body. So she comes up halfway through, she's simply going to rotate, and as she goes back down, she's going to go back to that hammer position.
For Phase 3 of ACE's Kickstart Guide, be sure to sign up for our Healthy Tips email newsletter. We'll see you next time.